I was thinking about this the other day. You ever dream of winning the lottery? Like the Powerball, the Mega Millions, or whatever country you may live in, whatever you have it there. You ever think about what you do? You imagine that recording studio that you would build in this huge house that you got. You probably get a massive Neve or an SSL console, tons of rack gear galore. I mean, you'd have the epitome of that dream studio that could compete with any studio on the planet. I don't know many people who do this who wouldn't want to do that. But what about us mere mortals? I've spent a lot of time on analog consoles, and I truly enjoy the overall feel and just the tactile part of a console. I really enjoy. But it's not all roses or whatever you want to say. It comes with a lot of compromises. Even today, with some of the consoles that are out today, they've improved that somewhat by, having built-in digital audio workstation control, so you have automation within the console itself as well as within your DAW. And so that has improved things. But ultimately, if you need to go back to a song, if you're like me, I work on, oftentimes if I'm writing and creating my own song, I'll do it in stages. I don't like to sit and say nonstop because I want to come back to it with some fresh ears later on. So I may move to something completely different, but that's just my style. Trying to bring something back up like that on a console, if you're heavily using any of its EQs or anything like that, is a pain in the butt. For those of you, most of you have heard the term recall. Well, that's what it is. You have these sheets where you fill out all the various settings for each individual track on the console. You mark your fader level, and then you typically have them for all of your outboard gear. So you'll mark off each one where it was and what was used, and the settings and everything on it. And that is typically how you would do that. Well, everybody may work somewhat differently, but that's a fairly common way of doing it. And that can be a pain in the butt. I have friends who still use consoles to this day and incorporate a ton of outboard analog into their workflow, but those people are tracking bands. If you're in a situation where you're tracking a band, it can make more sense, especially when you look at like the API, the box, or some Neve consoles, I think it's 8424, something like that, where you're mostly investing in the mic preamps and the ability to do analog summing. Now, some of the other features within that vary between API and Neve. As an example, you'd find the same thing within SSL's boxes. But all of that can make sense in that situation. But for most of you sitting at home, it just doesn't make any sense. I had a viewer ask me if they should maybe just forego an analog console they bought 10, 15 years ago that was just basically an entry-level recording console. Now, that's a step above what you would use in a live situation, but an entry-level recording console. And I'm like, yes. I mean, get rid of that thing. You're better off in the box, quite frankly, overall, because, that can just get in your way of being productive. A lot of people say it's faster on an analog console, and when you're used to using one, that is true if you just want to get up and go record. But if you're doing the whole production, it's not. And so, yes, today, if I won, $1 billion or whatever in the lottery, would I go out and deck the studio completely out? Yes, but I would also have a Studio B that's primarily in the box where I can link in a lot of my analog outboard there, because why not? I can afford it because I've got $1 billion freaking dollars, okay? And so I think these are things that, because a lot of people aspire to get there, and I just don't know if that just makes sense anymore. I personally would never advise somebody to get one. And, the masses I'm talking about, there are isolated incidences where they do make sense. I kind of alluded to those before. If you're in a, and even in a studio today, do you really need to have a console to have all the mic preamps you need? How many tracks are you actually going to be recording at any given time? These are the questions you ask. So what's the difference between having, let's just say you're going to track no more than 16 at any given time, because you do a lot of overdubs and things like that. But let's just keep it simple, right? You could easily have 2 8-channel Neve mic preamp units, and you're there. You could do the same thing with, you could have, 4 API or the 4 unit ones. I forget the model number of it, but it has the 4 312 or 512 mic pre's in it, or whatever. SSL makes some as well too. So you've got those options where you can incorporate that in whatever flavor you want by having that. Plus, I just said flavor. You can have something else besides just that. You can have a combination of API and Neve as an example, which is, I think, always a good combination to have those two in a situation, especially when you're tracking drums and the things like that. If a console makes sense to you, then go ahead and get it. If you've got the money to spend and it's not going to set you or your family back, then go ahead and get one if you truly enjoy doing it. But for most practical people out there, you're just not in a situation to where I don't think you're likely to see the benefit from something like that. And so that's just my 2 cents on the subject. I thought I'd share that with you today. Recently, Andrew Masters did a video on his that kind of made me think about that. And it really kind of put it in perspective again for me, because every once in a while I'll go through that thought process and realize, no, that doesn't make sense. Do me a favor. One of the ways I make money here is providing you Sweetwater links to anything you may want to purchase. So if you do want to go out and buy yourself a 40, 50, 60,000 plus, you can go through the roof from there. Feel free to use my link down below in the description. If you go down below there, you'll see the very first link. You can just click that, and whatever you buy at Sweetwater, I'll get a tiny percentage of. We don't make that much money off views here, so I appreciate if you do that. Then there's a list down below that I'll continue to grow. Those are pieces of gear that I recommend. Most of them, a lot of them are kind of budget orientated, stuff that's middle of the road with a few higher end pieces. But all of those pieces I strongly recommend if you choose to want to go do that. So do me a favor, check out those links below. Also, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. Most of my viewers are still not subscribers, so I'd appreciate if you do that. Also, leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think about having a recording console in your home studio. Does that make sense for you? And if so, tell us why. And if you got rid of a console and went I'm not saying all in the box, but you went into a hybrid type situation, share that with us too. That, I think, is one of the best ways of working, and that's in the hybrid, a combination of in the box and then outboard hardware. That's what I think can benefit most people, as long as you don't go crazy on the outboard. But until next time, hope all of you have a great day. Bye-bye.